For this week's news, we actually had a number of very exciting developments happen across the nation. The first one, I think, is the United States Postal Service has provided a policy update stating that it is now legal to mail hemp-derived products, including CBD, through the United States Postal Service. In fact, the policy update further stated that not only is it legal to do this as long as the mailer complies with all federal and state regulations and laws regarding hemp, but also retains records for to show that hemp product is legal and in compliance with local and federal laws. So this is actually rather surprising because most people were expecting that for the United States Postal Service to be a federal agency and allow for hemp and hemp-derived CBD to be mailed, you may have to sign a certification form or some sort of statement indicating what you're mailing and to assert that you are in fact in compliance. But the Postal Service is not requiring any of that and only requires you to retain records. So this is a very liberal and progressive step for the United States Postal Service. We commend them for this approach, and we'll look forward to seeing additional policy updates in regards to this in the future. Next up, we have updates from Nevada, where Governor Steve Sisolak signed a bill number 533 into law, which basically created a cannabis compliance board. This is unique because, as you may recall, Michigan recently removed our board, so now Nevada is instituting a board to govern all of their cannabis facilities. Furthermore, this same bill prohibits local governments from issuing social consumption licenses for up to 2 years. So that effectively leaves the entire state of Nevada, including Las Vegas, without having any social consumption license opportunities until 2021. This looks like it is a direct response to the Las Vegas City Council that voted in May to allow for social consumption business licenses and land use regulations to be created. So it looks like the state of Nevada is now creating a position for themselves where they are in direct contravention to what the City Council for Las Vegas has said and has made more of a definitive statement in that regard. And finally, we want to talk to you about how marijuana is becoming so mainstream that it is actually surpassing McDonald's and Starbucks in several municipalities. And I think we have a graphic to show you. So as you can see here, there's a graphic that was created by Marijuana Business Daily, and it shows the number of marijuana retail stores compared to Starbucks and McDonald's per 100,000 residents by city. And so Nick, I just wanted to talk to you about this briefly because it looks like, especially with Portland and Denver, you can see that the marijuana stores are so densely populated there that it's way above Starbucks, and I feel like I see Starbucks in every street corner.
Yeah, and I mean, I think this is especially interesting just given the fact that, you know, you have a lot of these green zones where it's pretty much a green oasis of different cannabis businesses. I mean, just for purposes of this conversation, gonna go ahead and make an assumption that, you know, a lot of these are centralized in a lot of bigger cities. Kind of to make that comparison right now, there's a lot of them allowed in Detroit. A lot of them that are going to be centralized in Flint, Bay City. And I think the influx and the kind of big first wave of businesses entering there, it kind of makes it very interesting, especially when you do kind of compare it to the numbers of coffee stores and fast food joints. I think there could be a lot to be said about the trend of kind of moving away from fast food into more healthy eating as well, but I think this kind of creates a big issue though. You know, I think the more the merrier to a certain extent, and I certainly think we're all pulling for a lot of more municipalities to come on board. It's the right decision to allow them, but I think it also creates some issues with operators and having to compete with so many businesses.
I would agree with that. What I'm seeing from these charts here is a very real congregation of like businesses, And then once you have a market that is so saturated, then you're going to be undercutting each other, trying to drive the prices lower. You're going to reduce your overall profitability, and you're not going to have as much overall success if you're in such an oversaturated market. And that's what I think especially Portland and Denver are coming close to, where it looks like Portland is several times higher than Starbucks, and that is significant. So, I mean, if you look at that graphic again, you can see how closely the numbers fall for Anchorage, Alaska, but when you look at Denver and Portland, again, marijuana isn't allowed throughout that entire state. It's going to be centralized in certain cities, in certain sections of those cities. So now you have dry zones where patients everywhere might not be able to have access in the more rural areas or areas of the city where they might not have public transportation. But you also have, on the flip side, an issue for the business owners now where they are forced to go find real estate and conduct business in an oversaturated market.
Mm-hmm. And I think it's a little, the businesses or the municipalities that allow these businesses there want them to succeed. It's in their best interests. A lot of them are thoroughly vetting these candidates. But if the system that they've set up makes it so that, if I'm having to lower my prices because Jennifer has a store next door and she's getting more customers and has a lot more marketing capabilities, so on and so forth, I shut down immediately, and then another person comes in my place, and then there's 6 different stores next door and on the next main street. You're pretty much setting up these businesses to fail. So I think that there needs to be a good balance between planning. Just because you're allowing it doesn't mean you should allow it on every single storefront. It also doesn't mean you should just allow one. So I think that a good mix, meeting in the middle somewhere there kind of makes the most sense from both a city and a business operational standpoint. And so obviously a lot of these markets are going to cater to different residents. Portland might have different needs, and those residents might be going to these different cities for different storefronts for different reasons, and maybe the market does need 28 different storefronts per 100K residents, but I think just generally, especially as it starts up in Michigan, if the numbers are like this, I definitely think there might be a lot of turnaround as far as operators go, and we definitely don't want to have that happen given how much these licenses cost compared to potentially getting a Starbucks or McDonald's up and running and keeping it running.
Right, absolutely. So it'll certainly be interesting to see how the local economies adjust to having possibly oversaturated markets, and seeing how the economy will equalize over time and reach an equilibrium. But that's it for today's news, and as always, we'll be coming at you next week with the next week's news.